Deeper Leaders, Pastor Chris here with our video leader training for our guilt week of Deeper. And you guys are getting close to the end. I just want to encourage you to finish strong. That I know this has been a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of deep soul work going on these weeks. And so just encouraged that you guys are sticking with it and going through it and doing the deep work that's going on. And so maybe spend some time this week encouraging your group with that, because certainly it can be challenging sometimes to look inside for so long and at such levels that we're not used to. And so encourage your group in that. And so we saved this week, the guilt week, to be toward the end, because one is we want to see our groups continue to form in terms of vulnerability and relatability, so that maybe they'll be a little bit more prone to sharing during this week if it's toward the end. But also because next week is our prayer week, and I'm going to actually talk more about that here in a few minutes, what our prayer week looks like. But really quick, a few things about guilt. Guilt is a heavy topic that I think we all can relate to. Every week you've noticed that there's probably some people in your group that can relate better to certain things than others might be able to. Like, for instance, some may really be able to identify with sadness or fear, where others don't. Maybe others identify more with anger or whatever that might be. But I think when it comes to guilt, it's something that we all can really struggle with, and either are or have struggled with it. And so, the reality is that even as believers, we know that we're forgiven, but sometimes we can carry around that guilt, can't we, in our own lives, even after we know that we've been forgiven, even after we have repented and gone away from it and accepted that forgiveness. It's easy to still hold on to that guilt. And so what I would encourage you guys to do this week is, as facilitators, I would encourage you to start off your group time with a story of your own guilt. And maybe something that you have found healing in, or maybe something that you're still working on that this week has kind of brought back up for you, and you realize that there's still some work that needs to be done there for you. And so I understand that that's uncomfortable and that's hard and requires another level of vulnerability perhaps, or maybe it's something you've already shared with your group. But I would encourage you facilitators to start with one of your own stories regarding guilt. And so this week we really tried to capitalize in the homework. We really tried to capitalize on the gospel, and so we used some big words in the gospel, some big theological words in the gospel, like atonement, which means that Christ paid our price for sin. He was the payment of sin, and a few other things like that. But really, we tried to capitalize on the real essence of the gospel, because what we believe is that for all guilt, whether it's guilt that of something that I've done or something that I haven't done, or it's something that I did a long time ago or something that I did today, that the antidote for all guilt is the same, and that is the message of the gospel of Jesus. And so we really tried this week to hammer that in, because even as believers, sometimes it's easy for us to forget. And so we tried to go back to some of the nuts and bolts of our faith. And so really what this looks like for us as believers is that we are innocent before God, that we stand before Him. At one point, we stand before Him guilty, and because of His sacrifice and because of His payment for our sin, we are now standing in right standing, in innocence before a holy and just God, which is amazing. But not only that, but in 1 John 1:9, we're promised that if we confess our sins, that He is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So there's this work that's going on in us. Not that we're just legally right before God, but that He's also working and cleansing us and changing us before him. And so, the enemy loves guilt. He loves it when we are guilty. And, the enemy loves to give us half truths like, hey, you really screwed up here. And it's like, yeah, that's true. But then the other part of it is a lie. And that other part of it is, well, you need to earn back your right standing with God. And I think we've all been there. I think we've all felt that. He would love nothing more for all of us to be stuck in our guilt and shame and to live under that bondage and under that burden of that weight that we carry. And so this could be a really freeing week for people. Like for some on week 5 when they were able to talk about their strongholds. Maybe for some people it was the first time that they were able to do that. It's a freeing week for people. And so leave some space for that. Leave some space for people to kind of spill their guts if they want to. It's a good time to remind your group, maybe even before you guys get started, of the confidentiality agreement that you all agreed to and signed at the beginning, that this is a safe place, that this is a place for people to talk and to find real, true healing, that we are a community of believers, that we are going to support each other, and we're not going to go around and talk about each other behind their backs or go spread what's going on behind them, but that what is talked about in the deeper group stays in the deeper group. And so so really that's what we're going to be looking at this week. I'm still praying for you guys regularly. Still want to know how things are going in your groups with you guys, and what sort of things are going well and what sort of challenges you might be facing. And so a couple of quick things real quick about the looking in, looking out, and looking up. And then I'm going to talk about the next couple of weeks coming up. This week for the looking up piece, it's Psalm 51, which is the Psalm of David that he wrote after he was confronted about his sin with Bathsheba and having her husband killed. And so, a grievous sin. And he writes out this psalm, this heart-wrenching psalm from the depths of his heart. And one thing in there that I really want you guys to focus on and kind of make mention of is he says, "Restore to me the joy of my salvation." That our guilt and our shame can rob from us the joy of our salvation, that it can really bog us down. And yet when we ask Christ to restore to us the joy of our salvation, that first time that we experienced his love, that first time that we experienced his forgiveness and his peace, and that joy that comes along with that, that's unimaginable, it's indescribable. God, restore to us that joy of our salvation. That's really my prayer for you guys this week as you go through this with your groups. And so a couple of quick things for the next coming weeks. This coming week for you is the prayer week. And so kind of like the rooted prayer experience, but it's during your group time. You don't have to set up another time for the prayer experience. It's during your group time next week, but there is homework that goes along with it. And so encourage your groups to finish strong, to spend some time this week. It's a much easier week this week, since we are going to be done with the 5 areas. It's a much easier week for us because we're spending time reflecting on his word and praying and just being with Jesus. And so encourage your group to spend time doing this. And then next week during your group time, I would encourage you, I'll talk more about this in the next video, but it's just a great time to have some space and to to talk with your group about what they experienced during the prayer time. And then also during the group time, it is going to be more of a prayer time. But like I said, I'll talk more about that in the next video. And then the following week, in the final week, is the journey continues. And so every week, you'll notice that there has been a case study that we have been following as we've talked about each of the areas. And in the journey continues, we're going to be asking people to write their own case study. And so this is kind of, it's going to be individualized, where people have realized the areas of their life where they are wanting to find some healing, and we realize that healing isn't instantaneous in these ways. Often they might be, but usually it's a journey instead of instantaneous. And so what does that journey look like? And so that'll be our final week. So you have 2 weeks left. Finish strong. Praying for you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.